My name is Daniel, I'm 40, and until that night I thought I understood the kind of woman I married. I knew she cared about appearances, status, the right dress, the right people. But I didn't think she'd ever use me as a punchline in front of a room full of strangers. I didn't think she'd twist the knife with a smile. The night it happened was her company's annual corporate gala. One of those glossy hotel events where everyone pretends to like each other while drinking overpriced cocktails and talking about mergers they don't really understand. She'd spent all week telling me how important it was that I come, how her coworkers wanted to finally meet the man behind her success. That phrasing stuck with me. Not the man in her life. Not my husband. The man behind her success. But I went anyway. I put on the navy suit she liked, shaved clean, even brought the bottle of wine her boss supposedly loved. I wanted to be a supportive husband. I didn't expect the night to turn into the quiet beginning of the end. The ballroom was already loud when we arrived. Glass clinking, shallow laughter, some jazz band playing in the corner. She immediately drifted toward a crowd of coworkers, dragging me by the wrist like a decorative accessory. A couple of them looked at me the way people look at a waiter carrying a tray they don't want to touch. One guy shook my hand and immediately checked his phone. That should have been my first warning. But things escalated when the conversation turned to money, as it always does at these events. Her colleague, a woman with a haircut sharp enough to slice bread, asked what I did for a living. Before I could answer, my wife cut in. "Oh, Daniel? He's comfortable," she said, waving her hand like she was describing a mid-level sofa. "He's not exactly, a high earner." The group chuckled, light, polite but real, and my wife smiled like she'd just delivered the punchline of a solid joke that I felt every pair of eyes check me over, sizing me up. I stayed quiet, controlled. I've learned the power of silence over the years. It unnerves people more than anger ever will. But she wasn't done. Someone asked how we managed our lifestyle if I wasn't bringing in much, and she leaned in closer to the circle so they could hear her whisper. "Let's just say, I carry most of the weight. The financial stuff, the planning, all of it." Another round of laughter. This time louder, sharper. It wasn't funny to me. It wasn't even accurate. But she didn't care about accuracy. She cared about attention, approval. She cared about being the star of the moment, even if it meant making me the joke. I stepped back slightly, watching her enjoy herself at my expense. And that's when I started noticing things. The lingering glances she exchanged with the tall guy across the room. The way her phone kept lighting up with messages she didn't open in front of me. The way she seemed more interested in impressing her colleagues than introducing me as her partner. Something wasn't right. Something had been off for months. But tonight it crystallized. She wasn't just drifting away. She was building a separate life. One where I didn't fit the image she wanted to project. Then the moment that would come to define the whole night hit like a flashbulb. Her boss, Mr. Klein, a man with the kind of quiet confidence that fills a room without saying a word, approached the circle. He shook my hand firmly, like he already knew me. My wife's smile faltered for the first time. "Daniel," he said, "good to finally meet you." I nodded, confused. Before I could answer, my wife jumped in, nervous laughter bubbling up. "Oh, don't tell me you've heard his big ideas," she joked. "He's sweet, but not exactly a business genius." The group chuckled again. My jaw tightened, but her boss didn't laugh. He looked at her, steady, unamused, and said something that silenced the whole circle. "Funny," he said slowly, "considering your husband is the man we've been negotiating that 7-figure supply contract with." Her face dropped, completely drained of color. The group froze. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time, or like she was terrified of what else her boss knew. He didn't stop there. He leaned in slightly, voice low but loud enough for everyone, and added, "Does your lover know that?" The entire room seemed to exhale at once. Her coworker's eyes widened. My wife swayed slightly, blinking fast. I didn't move, didn't speak, didn't save her. I just watched her world, the one she'd built without me, begin to crack. I didn't react when Klein said it. Not a twitch, not a blink. People think anger is loud, explosive, something that shatters a room. But the most dangerous kind of anger is the one that settles inside you like cold water. Heavy, still, focused. That's what I felt as the circle around us dissolved. Coworkers pretending to suddenly need more champagne. Others pretending they hadn't heard what was clearly heard by everyone. My wife stood there, frozen, like her heels were nailed to the marble floor. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She looked at me, then at Klein, then at the exit as if calculating which direction held the least humiliation. I just stood and watched. It was the first time in years I didn't try to save her from something she caused. Klein excused himself quietly, leaving her to face the silence. She finally exhaled and tried to force a laugh. "He's joking," she said weakly. "You know how bosses are." But her voice cracked in the middle, and the crack split her whole facade. The glossy, polished version of her that she brought to corporate events fell apart right there. Right in front of everyone she tried so hard to impress. Her colleagues, suddenly fascinated by floral centerpieces and their own fingernails, avoided looking at either of us. The music kept playing, the glasses kept clinking, but the air around us had changed. It had weight. It had truth in it. She grabbed my wrist with cold fingers. "Daniel, can we talk? Outside. Now." Her nails dug into my skin as she pulled me through the ballroom like a hostage she was trying to evacuate. I let her, not because I wanted privacy, but because I wanted to see what she would say when there was no audience to perform for. The hallway outside was quieter, lined with mirrors, the kind that reflect you from every angle, leaving no place to hide. She spun toward me, her mascara smudging slightly at the corners. "Why didn't you say anything back there?" she hissed. "Why didn't you defend me?" I stared at her, shocked by the question. Not because of what she asked, but because of what it revealed. In her mind, I was supposed to protect her even from the truth she created. Even from the consequences of her own choices. "I didn't say anything," I finally answered. Because there was nothing to correct. Her mouth opened again, ready to deny everything. But I didn't give her the chance. "And don't bother pretending you don't know what he meant." She flinched. Her eyes darted toward the ballroom doors, making sure no one was close enough to overhear. "Daniel," she whispered, "this isn't the place." "Apparently it was the place for you to mock me," I replied, still calm, still controlled. "So why isn't it the place for the truth?" She looked away, pressing her lips together, breathing fast. Klein misunderstood something. He probably heard some rumor. You know how offices are. She talked quickly, every sentence thin and fragile, slipping into the air like steam. "And I didn't mean what I said about your income. They were just joking. And you wanted to be the center of attention? I cut in. So you made me the punchline." She looked at me like a deer looks at headlights. Afraid, confused, and too stubborn to move. "Daniel, please," she said. "Let's not do this here." She reached for my arm again, softer this time, but I stepped back. Her hand hung between us, empty. For a moment she just stared at it like her body had acted without her permission. Then she tried again, her voice cracking. "I swear, there's nothing going on. You're taking this wrong." I didn't trust her. My instincts had been screaming for months, but I wanted to hear how far she'd go to deny reality, so I let her talk. She spun a story about team dinners and late meetings and how her coworker just flirts a lot. That's all. She insisted Klein was just stirring up drama, that the contract talk was a coincidence, and that the only reason she joked about my income was because that's what everyone does at these events. When she said that, something in me went dark. Like a door closing, I took a slow breath, then asked the one question she didn't expect. "What's his name?" She froze, completely. If the hallway had collapsed behind us, she wouldn't have moved. Her eyes flickered left, right, down, anywhere but at me. That's when I knew Klein hadn't misunderstood a damn thing. She wasn't innocent. She wasn't confused. She wasn't a victim of office gossip. She was caught. Her voice finally came out, barely a whisper. "Daniel, please." Not an answer. Not a denial. Just a plea. Plea for silence. A plea for protection. A plea for me to keep playing the same role I'd played for years. The steady husband who absorbs humiliation to keep the peace. The man who doesn't ask questions. The man who forgives quickly, blindly, automatically. The man she thought I still was. But something had shifted in me the moment she laughed at me in front of them. And something else shifted when her boss revealed the truth. Tell me his name, I repeated quietly. She stared at me with wet eyes, and for the first time I saw fear instead of arrogance. She knew the version of me she relied on was gone. She shook her head. I can't. You already did, I said. By not answering. Her breath hitched. Her shoulders slumped. And right there in that hallway, she began to understand that the night wasn't about a joke anymore. It wasn't about embarrassment. It wasn't even about the affair. It was about consequences. And for the first time, those consequences weren't going to fall on me. They were going to fall on her. She didn't follow me right away when I walked past her toward the elevators. I didn't raise my voice, didn't slam a door, didn't even look back. I just walked slowly, deliberately, letting the silence sit on her shoulders like weight she could finally feel. People think confrontation is loud. It isn't. Real confrontation is quiet, the kind that forces the guilty to hear their own breathing. I stopped near the tall windows overlooking the parking lot. The city lights shimmered against the glass. Behind me, heels clicked unevenly as she hurried to catch up, breath unsteady like she'd just run a mile. Daniel, please, don't walk away. We can talk. Just not like this. Her voice trembled, and for a moment I almost felt something. Sympathy, maybe, or the echo of what we used to be. But then I remembered the way she laughed at me. Loudly, proudly. I remembered the way she basked in it. How she didn't even glance at my face to see if I was hurt. And whatever softness I felt evaporated. I turned slowly, leaning one shoulder against the window, hands in my pockets, perfectly calm. We are talking, I said. You're just not saying anything useful. She closed her eyes, exhaling shakily. When she opened them, there was a different woman standing in front of me. Not the confident corporate star from the gala, not the polished wife who practiced smiles in the mirror, but someone stripped of her script, someone who didn't know what to do without control. You don't understand how complicated things have been, she whispered. At work, at home, everything has been tense. Tense? I repeated quietly. You mean because you've been lying to me for months? She flinched like I slapped her. I never lied, she said quickly. I just didn't tell you everything. That's the definition of lying, I replied. My voice wasn't cold. It was flat, empty, the sound of a man who's no longer fighting to be believed. She stepped closer, and I watched her fighting herself, wanting to confess just enough to seem honest but not enough to destroy her image of herself. It was never serious, she said. It was stupid. I was stupid. It was just attention during a stressful time. What's his name? I asked again. She shook her head slowly. I didn't repeat the question. I already had my answer. She reached out as if to touch my hand but paused when she saw my expression. Calm, unreadable, not offering comfort. Daniel, please, she said softly. You have to understand. I didn't think you'd care. That sentence hit harder than anything else that night. My wife, the woman I built a home with, didn't think I would care if she betrayed me. I stared at her in disbelief. Not care, I said, my voice low. Or not notice? Her face flushed. You've been distant, she said. Working all the time, distracted. I felt invisible. And then someone paid attention to me. Someone you slept with, I clarified. The way she stiffened confirmed it. She looked away, chewing her lip hard enough to leave a mark. Silence stretched between us again, heavy and deliberate. After a long moment, she whispered, I ended it. When? A few weeks ago, she said quickly, too quickly. Before tonight. That doesn't matter. She blinked. Of course it matters. Not to me, I said. An affair doesn't disappear because you got bored. She clenched her jaw, frustration bubbling up. So what do you want me to say? That I regret it? I do. That I'm sorry? I am. That I want to fix this? Of course I do. I love you, Daniel. I studied her face. The trembling lip, the watery eyes, the hands twisting together. It all looked like sincerity, but I'd seen her act before. I'd seen her turn emotion on like a faucet when she needed sympathy. What I didn't see was remorse. Not real remorse. Only fear. What exactly are you afraid of? I asked quietly. Losing me? Or losing the version of your life you brag about? She inhaled sharply. That's not fair. Neither was tonight. She opened her mouth, closed it, then repeated the movement like she was searching for a script that didn't exist. When she finally spoke, her voice was hoarse. I made a mistake, but you're acting like I'm a monster. You humiliated me in front of a room full of people, I said. And while you were laughing, your boss was the one who respected me. Not you. Him. She looked down, tears slipping silently down her cheek. But tears don't erase choices. I never wanted to hurt you, she whispered. I don't even know why I said those things tonight. I got carried away. I was nervous. Everyone was expecting something funny. So you made me the joke, I said. Because it was easy. She didn't deny it. Couldn't. Daniel, what do I have to do to make this right? Her voice was tiny, like she was afraid of the answer. I didn't respond right away. I let the silence stretch, watched her twist beneath it. Then I said the one thing she didn't expect. Nothing. She blinked. Nothing? There's nothing you can do tonight to fix this. Not here. Not in that ballroom. Not with apologies or explanations or tears. She swallowed. Then what does this mean? I straightened slowly, stepped past her, and pressed the elevator button. It means, I said without turning, that the truth has finally come out, and now I get to decide what to do with it. As the elevator doors slid open, she reached for my arm instinctively, but I stepped inside before she could touch me. She stood outside, trembling, mascara streaking down her cheeks, the woman who always thought she had the upper hand suddenly realizing she didn't. Not anymore. The doors closed between us, cutting off her last desperate whisper. Daniel, please don't leave. But I already had. When the elevator doors closed and her voice was cut off, I expected to feel triumphant, liberated, maybe even vindicated. Instead, I felt a strange, hollow quiet settle in my chest. Not sadness, just a calm awareness that whatever marriage we'd been pretending to have had already ended long before tonight. I just hadn't admitted it to myself until now. The elevator hummed softly as it descended, and I watched my reflection in the mirrored panel. I looked composed, steady, even controlled, but there was something different in my eyes. Not anger, not grief, just finality. A man who had stopped begging to be understood. That I stepped out into the lobby and walked toward the revolving doors, passing guests who smiled politely, unaware that the life I walked in with was no longer the one I was walking out with. Outside, cold air swept past me, cutting through the leftover heat of the ballroom. I loosened my tie, breathing in deeply for the first time all night. I could have gone home right then. I could have gotten in the car, driven away, and let her deal with whatever questions, whispers, or stares followed her. But something anchored me in place. Not indecision, not doubt, but clarity. I realized I wasn't done. Not yet. There were things I needed to know. Not because I needed closure from her, but because I needed to understand exactly how long I'd been living with a stranger. So I walked to my car, sat in the driver's seat, and did something I rarely did. I waited. I waited for her to come down, for her to decide whether she would chase me or stay upstairs and try to salvage whatever image she thought she could still control. Minutes dragged. Shadows shifted. People filed out of the hotel 2 by 2, laughing, drunk, unaware. And still she didn't come. I watched the entrance, my hands resting calmly on the steering wheel. And then, finally, the doors burst open and she rushed out, arms wrapped around herself, scanning the parking lot until her eyes found my car. She jogged toward me, heels clacking hard against the pavement, desperation visible even through the dim lights. That I rolled down the window halfway, not letting her in, not stepping out. She approached breathlessly. "Why did you leave like that?" she asked, voice trembling. "You embarrassed me. You just walked away." I stared at her. "Embarrassed you?" I said slowly, the absurdity of her words settling between us. "Your boss exposed your affair in front of 20 people. You humiliated me at your table. But you're upset because I walked away." She opened her mouth, stunned, then closed it again like she realized how ridiculous she sounded. She leaned closer to the window. "Daniel, please, get out of the car. Let's talk inside. People are watching." "Good," I replied. Her eyes widened slightly. She wasn't used to me saying things like that. She wasn't used to me being anything other than patient and predictable. She pressed her hands to the window frame. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was trying to fit in tonight. They always joke around. They talk about money, relationships, all of it. You didn't think I deserved respect? I interrupted quietly. You didn't think I'd ever stand up for myself. And you definitely didn't think your boss would know the truth. Her face crumpled, but not from remorse, from fear. You can't let him ruin my career, she whispered sharply. He misunderstood everything. I can fix it if you just back me up. Just tell him we're fine, that nothing is wrong. I stared at her, stunned for the second time that night. She wasn't worried about me. She wasn't worried about our marriage. She was worried about her position at work, her image, her reputation. That told me everything I needed to know. Is that what this is about? I asked. Your career. She looked guilty for half a second, then desperate. Daniel, be reasonable. You know how hard I've worked. You know how important this job is to me. More important than our marriage, I said. She looked away, jaw tightening. She couldn't even lie convincingly anymore. A long moment passed. People walked by, glancing at us, sensing something tense without knowing what. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. If you tell anyone, if you don't help me fix this, everything I've built will collapse. I tilted my head slightly. Everything you built by pretending you were better than me? Everything you built while sleeping with someone else? Her breath hitched, anger flickering behind her eyes. Don't phrase it like that. You're twisting things. No, I said calmly. I'm saying them plainly. She straightened, crossing her arms, trying to reclaim even a shred of control. I ended it, she said again. Isn't that what matters? It matters to you, I replied. Not to me. She breathed in sharply, exasperated. Daniel, what do you want from me? A confession? Details? For me to beg? I'm trying here. No, I said. You're scrambling. That's not the same thing. She blinked rapidly, her voice thinning. Do you still love me? The question hung in the cold air like a fragile glass ornament. I didn't answer right away. She stepped closer, her face inches from mine. Tell me you love me, she whispered. Tell me this doesn't change anything. I stared at her. The woman who laughed at me, lied to me, and sought validation from someone else, and I felt nothing. Not hatred, not longing, not heartbreak. Just clarity. What I feel, I said slowly, is no longer your concern. Her breath caught. She stepped back as if the words struck her physically. I started the engine. She shook her head, panic rising. Wait, you can't just leave. We need to fix this tonight. We need to talk. No, I said. You need to talk. I need to think. Daniel, she pleaded. Don't drive away. Please don't. Her voice cracked in a way I had never heard before. Raw, desperate, stripped of pride. But please don't erase consequences. I put the car in drive. She reached for the door handle instinctively, trying to stop me, but it was locked. She slapped her palm against the window. Daniel! I didn't look at her when I pulled away. I didn't need to. The image of her standing there, shivering, panicked, makeup streaked, finally facing the fallout of her own choices, was burned into my mind. I drove out of the lot slowly, calmly, feeling something settle inside me that had been disturbed for months. It wasn't vengeance, it wasn't victory, it was freedom. I didn't go home. I didn't even know where I was going when I pulled out of the hotel lot. Just knew I needed distance, space, silence that wasn't filled with excuses or explanations or tears meant to manipulate. I drove through the quiet streets of the city, passing closed shops and flickering streetlights, until I eventually found myself parked along the river. The water moved slowly, reflecting the night sky, calm in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. I sat there with the engine off, the only sound the ticking of the cooling metal and the faint hum of the distant highway. And for the first time since the evening began, I allowed myself to feel something. Not pain, not anger, but the simple truth of what my life had become. I had spent years trying to hold together a marriage that looked good from the outside but never truly felt steady on the inside. That I thought about the beginning. How she used to look at me like I was enough. How our small apartment felt full. How we used to laugh while cooking dinner together. How she'd crawl onto the couch and rest her head on my chest without needing to perform for anyone. Somewhere along the way, she stopped being that person, or maybe she never was, and I just saw what I wanted to see. Either way, the woman who mocked me in front of her coworkers wasn't the woman I married. And the man she cheated with wasn't the real betrayal. It was how easily she threw me under the bus. How quickly she used me as a prop to entertain people she didn't even like. I realized then that she hadn't just betrayed our vows. She had betrayed the version of myself I had to shrink into to keep her happy. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. First one message, then another, then a call, then another. I didn't touch it. Eventually the screen lit up with her name again, this time followed by a dozen texts. Please come home. We need to talk. I'm scared. I can't lose everything. Daniel, please answer. Not one message asking if I was okay. Not one message apologizing without self-interest. Not one message saying she loved me without begging me to fix the fallout for her. She wasn't afraid of losing me. She was afraid of losing control. She was afraid of what her boss now knew. She was afraid of what people would think when the truth spread. And the more I read, the lighter I felt. The weight I'd carried for months, the suspicion, the anxiety, the disappointment, began to lift. Eventually I started the car again. Not to go home, not to return to the hotel, but because I knew exactly what I wanted to do next. I drove to my office. It was past midnight, but the security system recognized my code, and the building was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. I walked into my private conference room, sat down at the long glass table, and opened my laptop. It took me 5 minutes to find the contract paperwork her boss mentioned, the $1 million deal she had assumed I'd fabricated when I tried to tell her months ago. She never believed in my career, never asked, never cared. So she didn't know I'd been promoted to lead that division. She didn't know the contract Klein referenced wasn't luck. It was the culmination of months of work she dismissed as your little projects. I put everything in a folder, clear, labeled, organized. Then I printed out a summary report, something simple and factual, showing my position, my salary, my negotiations, my team, my budget, everything she always mocked me for not having. I didn't do it out of pride. I did it because clarity is powerful, because truth feels better when it's written down, solid and undeniable. When I was done, I placed the folder in my briefcase and leaned back in my chair, and I realized something important. I wasn't angry anymore. The anger had burned away and left only quiet certainty in its place. By the time I drove home, the sky was beginning to lighten with early dawn. The house was dark except for the living room lamp. She was sitting on the couch wrapped in a blanket, eyes swollen from crying, phone clutched in her hand. She jumped up when she saw me come in. Daniel, she whispered, voice shaking. Thank God. I thought, I didn't know. She hesitated, searching my face for softness, looking for the version of me she was used to, the man who forgave too quickly, who reassured her even when she was the one who caused the pain. That I walked past her, set my briefcase on the table, and removed the folder. She stared at it as if it were ticking. What is that? The truth, I said simply. She hesitated before reaching for it. When she opened it, she froze. Her eyes scanned the documents, widening with each line she read. A visible tremor went through her hands when she reached the page outlining the projected revenue for the contract. Daniel, she whispered, voice breaking. I didn't know. You didn't care to know, I replied. That's the difference. She sank onto the couch, covering her mouth with her hand. I sat across from her, not beside her, and waited. Finally, she lowered her hand and looked at me with tear-filled eyes. Do you want a divorce? The words hung heavily in the air. For a long moment I didn't speak. I watched her panic rise, watched her mind fill with worst-case scenarios, watched the woman who always felt superior finally feel small. No, I said slowly. She inhaled sharply, hope flickering, but I wasn't done. I don't want anything from you tonight. Not a decision. Not apologies. Not promises. She blinked, confused. Then what do you want? I stood up, walked to the door, and turned back to her. I want time, I said. I want distance. I want to remember who I was before I let you shrink me. Her lips trembled. And if, after that, you decide you don't want me back? I held her gaze, calm and steady. Then that will be your consequence, not my loss. She broke then. Silent tears, shoulders shaking, hands gripping the blanket like it could keep her from falling apart. But I didn't console her. I didn't kneel beside her. I didn't touch her. I simply walked to the guest room and closed the door. As it clicked shut, I felt the final shift inside me. A quiet reclaiming of my dignity. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. Subscribe for more stories.